Welcome to the RMM Talkshow. I'm Rita Isiba, and together with my lovely co-host Margareta Sailer, we explore strategies and share insights in that redefine meaningful management.
We'll be talking about new work, inclusive leadership with a real emphasis on employee experience and engagement. Hello everyone, we've got a fantastic episode lined up for you today. We'll be unlocking the secrets behind the effective communication and how it plays a pivotal role in fostering collaborative teams.
That's right. Let's start by digging into why communication is the backbone of successful collaborations. Think about it. Collaborative teams are essential in order for you to win, right?
Yep.
Effective communication is what weaves all of these elements together into a beautiful symphony.
Right, Rita, obviously, thank you for talking to me about this particular subject. I think when it comes to communication strategies for collaborative teams, it's quite an important one, and I know you do a lot of work around this because it can really change the effectiveness of your team. If you connect your people, you know, you can just do a lot more work, and more importantly, if people feel more together. You know, they feel like they're aligned, they feel like they're all working towards a common goal and they know what they're after. In a lot of organizations, I think we do have these problems where that doesn't happen, and it causes a lot of unrest, it causes a lot of uncertainty, anxiety, and inequality to an extent, because one person might know one thing from the manager and the next person don't. So I have a question for you, of course. Tell me a little bit about why is effective communication important, and why does it make a better teamwork?
You know, that question sounds so easy, but it can go in all different directions. When we say communication, we just think about having a chat, talking, you know, exchanging a dialogue. But there's so much more about an effective communication. Effective communication can also be non-verbal ways of conveying your meaning as well. And it can also be silence. So you never put silence into context of communication, but also that all falls into effective communication. And going into your question, why is effective communication important for teamwork? Well, think about this. If you are working in a team and you feel that you cannot communicate with your team members, how on earth can you move forward?
It's isolating, actually.
And you can use this example from all aspects of our lives. Let's use the example in the hospital, surgery. So you have to work in a team to address the problem of a person lying there reliant on you making them feel better or even saving their lives. So there will be a person in leadership, which is most likely the chief surgeon, and many other individuals who are part of the team. So be it the person who's responsible for the anesthesia.
Got it. Well, we're not surgeons, are we? Come on, give yourself a break.
The person who even is responsible for just passing on the utensils, you know, you can't underestimate that. Even the person who is making sure that the surgeon doesn't drip sweat onto an open wound, right?
I know.
So everyone plays a key role in communication. And the beautiful thing is that communication is multifaceted. So one person speaks quiet, another one loud, and even though we all speak the same language, we can also use different words for certain meanings. The most effective teams are ones that speak the same language. So I'm not talking about in linguistic term like everyone speaking English, but they have their own terms for certain things, right?
Completely.
Like you mentioned in Tesla earlier, that you had this mission of an evolution. So if you say evolution, I'm thinking about something else. I'm thinking about the evolution evolution of human beings.
Yes.
But you guys knew when probably Elon Musk said evolution, everyone thought, okay, this is why we're doing this. We want to make a change, right?
Yeah.
And that will bring you back to the spirit of things. So communication is important, just that you make sure that everyone has the same language. Body language is also very crucial. That's the reason why it's always important to have cross-cultural training as well. Because take for instance a person coming from Bulgaria, a person originally from Bulgaria on your team. People don't realize that the way we nod yes, that actually means no in Bulgaria,
fair enough,
right? Or other aspects could be that of Africans standing very close to each other when they speak. But in the colder countries, let's take Austria for example, you need a little bit of distance. Of course, if you come from an urban place like in the city of Vienna, you even welcome the distance even more, right? But because we live in such a condensed, populated city, we want our private space, but we're kind of used to being in each other's faces. Just look at the underground during peak hours.
Oh my God.
So, and if you think about the people who live outside of Vienna, where your next neighbor might be kilometers away, you know, you welcome or you appreciate the distance more because you're kind of used to it. And this is why I always love to emphasize diversity means that we are all different.
Exactly.
And this all plays into the way we communicate with each other. So not just the language, not just the body, but also the silence.
And you know what's actually quite interesting, because in psychology and generally how we behave and how we move, there is a few non-verbal clues, however, although we all speak different languages, that we are communicate actually quite effectively the same. It's really interesting. So for example, when we raise our eyebrows, in all cultures it's the same. We're actually looking for approval. It's really interesting. You know, you're looking to somebody, you're raising your eyebrows, and subconsciously you're actually looking for approval. So it's really interesting when you go more and more into psychological part. There's these non-verbal cues that we're not even often aware of, that we actually have very similar. That's the non-verbal communication. But we, you know, obviously today we're focusing more about, you know, how we communicate with the teams and what's more obvious, I suppose. I mean, do you want to share anything maybe in terms of a client that you might have worked with in the past?
Oh gosh, I've got so many. I wouldn't even know where to start. But one of the recent issues that I helped overcome was how to communicate with teams who work remotely, and not just remotely, also geographically. And you know, when you communicate via video call, a lot of the body language is lost in translation as well. So you communicate via the camera, and I'm trying to convey something to you, but you can't really see the body language behind it. And things can be misconstrued, things can be misunderstood. And this is even more heavier when the person that you're communicating with comes from a country that you're not really familiar with. And you mentioned earlier, for example, in tech companies, you tend to have a shortage of talents within the tech field. So for example, someone specializing on user experience, I'm just using an example here, and you will tend to go into countries where there's a large population who has an expertise in this field. Let's just take India, for example. And it's renowned that in the Indian culture, it's quite rude to say no. It's rude to say no. So that's the reason why people hesitate to actually say no. That's a big problem in communicating with someone who's not aware of difference of culture. That you may ask a question, but this person who happens to come from India wants to say no, but they go, you know, they try and go in circles to explain to you that this doesn't work without using the two-letter word no. A lot can be misconstrued in this, you know, and this all boils back to effective communication and how important it is that you mingle with people different than you are, because if you would happen to have an Indian friend, or you delve a little bit deeper into their culture, you would understand that. You know, if you just have this one person who happens to be exposed to different cultures, they can also help translate. But when I say translate, I don't mean linguistically, but translate, okay, I think what is trying to say that this doesn't work, without having to say no.
Yeah, and you know what? Actually, that reminds me of something. I'm originally from Austria, from Vienna, right? But I moved to the UK 20 years ago, and I really struggled initially. I'm a team player, you know. I love working in a team. I communicate quite easily with people, never an issue. But when I moved to the UK, I really struggled to actually get into this team environment, and the reason for that was that, as we Austrians, we communicate quite straight. So we tell you if we like something or if we don't like something.
Direct.
We tell you if we're going to do it or we don't, right? So easy, you know. No. But when I moved to the UK, I found that similar, it's not quite as straight. So we talk a little bit around the subject and gently moving away from we don't want to do it. And I just had to think, I don't get it. Are we doing it? Are we not? Until I always got some, you know, help from somebody and went after a team, because when I was young, you know, and I moved to the UK, I was like, are we doing this now? Are we not? You know, after the meeting. So so that, you know, but I think if I would have had my first company, I'm not talking about others that I've worked with, but somebody who was more culturally aware, they might have grappled that as a leader straight away. And try to intervene and make everyone understand. But anyway, you know, we live and learn, right?
So I wanted to delve into a little bit about the tools.
Exactly.
But I can see your questions here, so I'll let you ask that.
What sort of tools and techniques can improve teamwork and engagement through communication? So what's your experience that you might want to share with the audience?
Yes, well, you know, we live in this day and age where tools can be used very easily. In the past, we didn't really utilize what's out there, but thanks to the corona pandemic, we are now more aware than ever what can actually help us communicate with each other, especially if you're working remotely as well. And I started to come up with the explanation, or with an example of me working of a previous client of mine, and how they could overcome their communication barriers. So other than the linguistic ones and things going lost in translation with the body language, one thing that I love working with, one tool, is Slack.
I do like
without endorsing Slack, but Slack, you can endorse us. I love working with Slack because it's a great way to exchange ideas. It's a great way to keep tab of conversations as well. You can actually create group chats on particular subjects without having to hold a meeting where a lot of people are not particularly involved in that aspect that they may be talking about. And I love the fact that you have the ability to also use emojis, because I know also people who don't like working with emojis, but they are very good for us to use in order to convey the body language. Right? True. So I love working with emojis as well in all communication tools, because it can help you convey the body language that you will usually use when you want to say something.
That's a good
point. And video calls, you know, Zoom, Google Meet, FaceTime, you know, you name it. Video calls are a great way to. It's an upgrade to a normal phone call where you don't see the person. I actually prefer that, but I do like voice notes though. I do. Voice notes are still good, right?
Especially when you have a busy life, right?
Yes.
But you still feel connected, don't you?
Yes.
Because you still know you're thinking about what the other person said, and even you can't go in, kind of not voice notes for sure.
Absolutely. And, you know, with effective communication, I think it's also necessary that you regularly check in with someone within the team or outside the team as well. What, you know, if you ask someone, so how are you? But really ask, how are you? Or is everything all right? Can I help? You can save yourself so much hassle. If you actually stop and just look around and see, is everyone on board? It's also a very crucial part of effective communication. Let's use the example of an orchestra.
Yeah.
right? There's many individual musicians who are specialists of their instrument.
Yeah.
So the conductor might be out there giving them a plan in how to, use the instrument in order to create a symphony.
Yeah.
But someone might not really understand it, but they're nervous to put their hand up to say, I didn't really get that.
Yeah.
Imagine what will happen if they didn't really follow what the conductor says.
Yeah.
That person will go out of tune.
Yeah.
And that one person that goes out of tune, if the other people don't pick up on it and correct the mistake,
Yeah.
then it's so obvious for the audience.
Yeah.
And that could be a disaster
That's right.
for an orchestra,
Yeah.
particularly one that is being recorded live.
Yeah.
So this is just an example how effective communication is and how important it is to check in that everyone is on the same page.
Yeah, and I love that, because if you think about being on your video calls, for example, normally when you're in a room with people in a group, not just that you see people, you read the face expressions, you also have a certain energy. Yes. Obviously, when you're on video chats, you don't have that. And some people don't have their camera on because they don't have bandwidth or whatever reason. Yes. And some companies don't put them on, right? So actually to double check and communicate more than you normally would if you sit in a room makes a massive difference.
Yes.
Yeah, completely.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Anything else comes to mind?
Well, I mentioned regular checkups. Feedback ties right into this. I don't need to break it down really, but it's crucial that feedback comes from all corners. So not just from the top down, but it's also important that there's ability for people who are not in the leadership to give the leadership feedback as well. Yes. And, I mentioned the open door policy, which is important, in my opinion.
Completely. We do like that. If we just think about maybe moving on to the next one.
Yes.
Yeah, because obviously you've given us some really great examples. Communication is everywhere. Having your strategies, like you said, may that be on an email, may that be listening over Zoom, or may that be listening as you are in a room and hearing that feedback and then giving it back. It's perfect. Yes. I guess my next question would be, how do experts view the role of communication in creating those inclusive teams? What would be your thoughts around that?
Yes, I've sat in quite a lot of communication training. Right. And I even up till now, I try to develop my knowledge in this field. Yeah. And sometimes I feel that the experts are too theoretical when they convey what they would like to say.
Right, fair enough.
And I'm a big fan of using metaphors, of using visual ways of communication, of using your hands to underline what you want to say. Yes. When you make your listing first, perhaps to also use your fingers. Yeah. So in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is that I think it's important to try everything possible other than your words to communicate. Right. For me, that's a wholesome way of communication because then everyone feels included. Yeah. Not everyone soaks up information in the same way. Some people are more visual, some people are more auditorial, right? Some people are more, what is the third one? I don't even know, to be fully honest, but people are more tacit, right? Yeah, they're hands-on. More tactical, exactly. And I think when you want to communicate a story or information, then you should try and mix it up a little bit and give maybe like a metaphor, examples, tell a story, use your hands. Look, I'm doing it myself, but that's subconsciously. So, yes, that's what I would... like to share in this respect.
Perfect. I think the thing is as well also with communication, if you think about it, we all communicate all day long because that's how we survive. That's how we get around, that's how we live. But communicating effectively in a company or when you are in a group of people is a completely different ballgame. Yeah. That is the more strategic part of thinking about how you use all of these techniques that you have mentioned. And there's, like you said, we're constantly learning about it, right? Yeah. But just give us your key takeaways, really. Tell us just summarize what you would say to an audience.
Well, summarize. Well, takeaways. That's a good one.
Like
so, I mean, summarize I could, but I also have a few things to add.
Right.
I thought actually, besides tools, besides using your body and your hands and using metaphors and words, I also believe it's very necessary for you to learn the skill of small talk.
Right.
To break the ice.
Fair enough. Yeah.
As well.
Agreed.
Because if you want someone to soak up the information that you want to convey, people tend to believe you, and it sticks to your head even more if they feel
the personal
that
connection.
right? Correct.
Completely, yeah, I get it.
And breaking the ice, what I mean by that is just to use maybe like 5 minutes or maybe just 2-3 sentences to get to know the person that you're speaking with.
Yeah.
You know, you see it with the top keynote speakers. Before they start with their keynote, they try and sense the mood and the knowledge of the audience. So they will say, put your hands up if you have experienced
Right.
you know, and that's a form of icebreaker. You can do that in a meeting as well.
Yeah.
Silly things like, for example, everyone just stand in one line according to your birthdays. And people are then forced to say, so when is your birthday? Oh, that's my birthday as well. Oh, my sister's birthday is on that day. I'm going to remember that. It breaks the ice. And that's also a beautiful way of effective communication to make sure that you don't really have that distance. And this also brings me onto my final point. Quite often I'm asked, should we change, and this is more applicable in French or in German companies, should we be more informal with our tone when we communicate with each other? In the English language, you're almost equal because you use the word you. It applies to everyone. But in France or in Austria, a person that you don't know, you won't automatically address them by you. So there's a way to either talk formally or informally.
Yeah, that's right.
I think when it comes to a way of communicating with someone which is just a one-off, it's okay. But within an organization, I believe it's a no-go. Especially if you're in a creative field or if you're in an organization where you need to innovate constantly, you need to figure out a way how you break that barrier by making sure that everyone speaks in a formal tone, that there is not a form of hierarchy. And so I would also like to make this as my plaidoyer, that if you're looking to be more creative, if you're looking to generate more innovation, try and adapt the more informal language. And that's it from me, actually.
I'm liking it. I'm liking it on your closing thoughts. I couldn't have said it any better. I mean, over some of these episodes, we uncovered the secrets to building inclusive teams, you know, fostering engagement and harnessing the power of effective communication.
Managing uncertainty, winning talent.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to do. So let's keep going and let's talk to more of the audience. And with this particular one on communication strategies, let us know from the audience, have you ever worked in a company that does communication particularly well? Because it's a really tricky subject. And we all learn from each other as professionals. So drop us a comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us in this discussion. That's it for today's episode.
Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more insights and inspiration on building inclusive and engaged organizations.
Until next time, remember that inclusivity isn't just a goal.
It's the key to unlocking the future potential of people.